Hello, hello. I can Oh my gosh, there's loads of chat already. So, good evening or good afternoon, depending where you are, Invisible Borderline. Um, oh, I'm getting an echo. Is anyone else getting that? Um, I'm getting an echo. Is anyone else getting that? There we go. That should be that fixed. I have my channel open in another window. So, hello, good evening, Invisible Borderline. Good to see you. So, I'm intrigued. What have you and your friend been debating? I can't wait to hear you ask. And hello, the mastermind. You guys have been in every chat recently. It's so nice to see same people again. So I'm glad you're hanging in. And I'm glad you're also hanging in. So, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It is really difficult, isn't it? When there's someone that you would like to be with, but maybe you know it's not good for you to be with them. That is tough. That is tough. But, when you have situations like this, where you have someone who is not willing to work on themselves, using substances, and probably not treating you very nicely, you are best not spending time with them in the holidays or at other times. It's really tough. And sometimes the BPD runaway is adaptive. Sometimes it's exactly what you need. So nice to see you guys supporting each other. And oh my gosh, Cluster B Milkshake Sarah is here. Good to see you. And happy almost New Year. What are you guys doing for New Year? I'm the reason I'm doing the live today is it's one of my best friend's birthday is on New Year's Eve. So she's coming here and we're having a little birthday party. And she has a kid who's about the same age as my kid, just a little bit older. So it's great because they get on really well. They'll go, they'll play, and we'll have grown-up time. And Happy New Year to you too, Mastermind. So, that I need to do that after. I need to have a hard seltzer after this. I won't do it during. What are you guys up to for New Year? And hello, on my way. Nice to see you. That's not being lazy, that's resting. That's resting. Enjoy the rest. That sounds good. That sounds really nice. So let me know, Invisible Borderline, what was your question? And the rest of you, let me know, what are you guys doing for New Year's? And are you doing something fun? Sane is boring. Don't be too sane. You gotta have fun. You're gonna get some booze, but don't want to leave the house. Damn. What are you gonna get? See, you gotta think what makes it worth leaving the house. That's what you gotta ask. What makes it worth getting out? Hopefully more than booze. So yeah, fill me and hit me up with questions. And what else? Oh, how sweet. How old's your granddaughter? And I hope you guys have fun. That's really nice. My kid does, we do Christmas with family, but New Year it's my time. I see my friends, they come, and we have a lot of fun. That's my reward for doing family at Christmas. NPD versus true psychopathy. It seems the anti-narcissist economy confuses the two. Yes, there's a lot of the anti-narcissist economy. That's a very nice use of words. But it's true, because I think there's a whole spectrum of narcissism. And at one end, you have these very extreme, really psychopathic, dangerous individuals. And actually, there's some evidence as well that that's probably more genetically driven. That really is innate. But you also have a lot more on the way, where you have narcissistic defenses. They really can interfere with people's lives and their functioning. They can really interfere with people's relationships. But I think it's quite a long way from psychopathy, and probably not always as dangerous. It can be, but yeah. And I think there's this real caricature about narcissists and narcissism, and that's kind of one of the reasons I started putting stuff on YouTube, because I wanted to kind of just present a different voice and a different perspective. Because, quite apart from the impact on people who have any kind of pathological narcissism, to be bombarded with this constant stream of narcissists are evil, narcissists are a hopeless case, there's no change for the narcissist. That in itself is highly stigmatizing and shaming, and isn't conducive to people engaging in any kind of help or making any changes in themselves. But it's also really, really disheartening for people who have relationships that they value with people they also recognize as being quite narcissistic. And that's not necessarily with a partner. It can be with a partner. Sometimes it's with an ex-partner with whom you have to co-parent. But it could also be with a parent or a sibling or a child, an adult child who is quite narcissistic. And I think we do a real disservice to people to deny that full spectrum of narcissism and not give the tools and strategies to actually work constructively and to engage better in relationships for everyone, whether they're narcissistic or not narcissistic, to improve relationships. I think we really do a major disservice to people in presenting this kind of very myopic caricature of a narcissist. At the same time, I also would certainly agree that there are times that there are people who are not good for you to be around, the people it's not good to be in a relationship with, and you're best off keeping a lot of distance from. But I do nuance. Not everyone does. What has anyone else found that as well? Like, this winter has just been awful for colds, because I feel like everyone in this house has had a cold since October, and it's grim. So your granddaughter is 19. That's still sweet. Oh, well, I hope she has a lot of fun with you. The weather is shit in the UK too. How do you deal with seasonal depressed people? Same way as you treat any kind of depression, like, meds can be helpful, but so too is getting out. Even when you're in that isolating stage, like, get out, get some fresh air, get sunlight. I don't know how much evidence there is to support it, but I have a friend who swears by a lamp. So, like, it's a special lamp that gives her the right kind of light. So some people try that, but I think there's a lot to be said for not hibernating and getting out and moving and getting some daylight. And of course, if it's really bad, yes, you can use antidepressants, and some people will take them in the darker months and not in the summer, and they will go back on them in the winter again. I also know quite a few people who will temporarily up their dose of antidepressants in the winter and then drop it back down again in the summer. Obviously, that's not something to do. Don't do that based on my advice, because I don't prescribe. I'm not a doctor, but I'm not that kind of doctor anyway. But certainly, if it is something that troubles you, that's something to talk to whoever prescribes your antidepressants. A lot of people making bank being anti-narcissists, including some narcissists. I won't name names. Hey, Rayan. Good to see you again. My experience is that NPD has remorse, but it gets twisted and defended against. Yes. Yes. And I think that's why you often see the really big reactions from people who are very narcissistic. That narcissistic rage is often, I feel remorseful, I feel sorry, but then I'm also really angry and I feel hard done by. And if the other person doesn't acknowledge their part enough or isn't immediately forgiving, it's so humiliating and shameful for me. And so you do get this massive rage reaction too. So I think you're right. It does get twisted and defended against. I would love to know Sarah's view on that too, because um, yeah, I completely. And people who have true psychopathy, they don't care. They don't, because there is a real like absence of empathy and absence of compassion or concern for others at all. And the sort of true psychopath isn't necessarily like type 1 psychopathy. They're not really concerned about how they come across to other people. They're much more motivated by personal gain, whatever it is they're trying to gain. So yeah, they don't really have those any kind of remorse. You missed people saying hello? You haven't missed that much. BPD gets a bad rap, and the anti-narcissist people demonize BPD also. Yeah, they do. They do. It's kind of interesting to see this evolve, actually, because I qualified in 2009, and when I trained, people would say to things like, "Oh, people with borderline never change. It's a hopeless diagnosis. There's no treatment for it." And at that time, dialectical behavior therapy was just kind of emerging, and schema therapy. I think Jeffrey Young had just written his book, um, and there just wasn't that much. And then all of a sudden, there were loads of treatments with evidence to treat borderline. And everyone was like, yeah, we can treat borderline. And unfortunately, the services are not always there to do it. But I don't think I've heard anyone say borderline personality disorder is untreatable for years and years and years. But when I was training, everybody thought, a lot of people thought it was untreatable. And I remember as well, like my supervisor saying, "Oh, you don't have to work with people with borderline because you're just starting." And I remember actually asking, "Well, maybe I should because I'm going to qualify soon." And then I was allocated someone with a diagnosis of borderline, and I was like, "I really like this. This is really nice." And then I started seeing quite a few people with borderline. I was like, "I like all of them. This is really nice work." And I was like, "Why are you all so upset about this? Why are you all finding this so difficult?" So it's kind of really interesting to see that happen with borderline, how borderline went from this is untreatable, this is hopeless, there's nothing we can do for these people, to yeah, we have lots of really good treatments. Um, I hope the same thing happens with NPD, actually. And I think in time it will. Unfortunately, I think people with NPD are less help seeking. Borderlines seek help a lot. So they want help. They really are prepared to engage in therapy. They do ask for help. Whereas I think people with NPD are much more reluctant to ask for help. And when they do, it's not necessarily so evident that there's NPD going on, because often they present with other things. So they present in a crisis, and then when the crisis resolves, they don't continue to engage. It's kind of one of the classic presentations. And of course, people with NPD also often present with substance abuse or depression or anxiety. So sometimes I think NPD goes unrecognized. But I definitely think that there are things that are changing, and I really hope we end up with some better therapies for NPD in the not so distant future. I really do. Darren, hello. Don't ask me tough questions, Darren. That's what you said to me in your life. I don't want no tough questions. Is it a vitamin D lamp? I didn't know. Anyway, look up SAD lamp, seasonal affective disorder lamp. I think some people really seem to like them a lot, but I'm not recommending, because I don't do that. take medical advice, give the disclaimer, get advice from your own doctor. Vitamin D pills work. Yeah, it's interesting, like, because I live in the UK, so it's like quite dark through the winter, and the vitamin D deficiency apparently is not at all uncommon. And for some people, it can contribute to mood disorders for sure. So you don't feel remorse and you don't care. You don't ask for forgiveness and you don't regret shit either. I'll be interested to hear what Mark has to say. You had a PhD say BPD people will never change. They are forever scanning to manipulate people. That is exactly the sort of thing I used to hear people say 15, 20 years ago. And I haven't heard anyone in the kind of clinical field say things like that for a long time. I think there's definitely been changes in attitude. And I'm not saying it's perfect because it isn't perfect. Clearly it isn't. And I think people with borderline often get treated very badly in health settings. However, I do think attitudes have changed for the better in the time that I've been working. Yeah, there's loads of good treatments for borderline. There's loads of good therapies for borderline. And it's a shame that they're not more available and more choice available, because I wish everyone could choose, like, do you want DBT? Do you want schema therapy? Do you want mentalization-based treatment? Do you want a more group program? Do you want more traditional psychodynamic psychotherapy? Or do you want something that has more practical elements to it and it's a little bit more kind of focused on the here and now? Do you want something that's much more focused on the past and on trauma processing, and basic, kind of deciding the best therapy option for that person at that time based on their particular needs and goals and priorities in that moment? We're a long way from that. But I think that's how it ought to be. And I hope we go in that direction. So, yeah, this doesn't sound like a great person. That does not sound like a great person. So cluster B, I rage when angered is being slighted and for disrespect, transference. It sounds like it's a reaction to feeling in any way devalued or not viewed in a positive way. If you feel like you're being disrespected, that's such a threat to your sense of self. You can get the big rage and anger. Ryan, I don't understand people who say they can't empathize with NPD. The definition of empathy has nothing to do with the way the other treats you. It's up to you to put yourself in their shoes. I think as well, I think people confuse empathy with sympathy and compassion. They're all completely different things. Empathy is just the ability to imagine yourself in someone else's shoes and to consider how they might be feeling. And you can do that. It can be more cognitive, or it can be something that you feel. It can be more like emotional empathy. But empathy is just understanding something about the other person's experience. It isn't agreeing with them. It's not approving of it. And you can use it very tactically. I mean, I did this really, really fun course. I did it on Masterclass with Chris Voss. And he used to be an FBI negotiator, hostage negotiator. And I tell you, he had some really, really interesting stories. But one of the things that he said, it was really important when he was negotiating with people who'd taken hostages, terrorists, was he had to build empathy for them. And he wanted to find out about their culture, their background, their family, their priorities, what they wanted, what motivated them, because it gave him what he called tactical empathy. It allowed him to figure out what his leverage was, so he had negotiating power. And I'm like, this is very similar to what Wendy Behery teaches when she teaches empathic confrontation, because what she kind of helps therapists do when they're working with people with MPD, but also partners or family members or people close to someone who's very narcissistic is to build that empathy so you can figure out how best to negotiate with them in a way that's likely to be constructive. Um, so you need that empathy in order to be able to be a good advocate for yourself with someone who might be highly narcissistic and might be antagonistic towards you for whatever reason. So I think this is one of the things people don't understand, that about empathy, that it's not agreement or sympathy or even compassion. But I think when you marry it with sympathy and compassion, I think that it can be very, very good for your relationships at times. And I don't have issues with being sympathetic or compassionate towards people who are narcissistic, but it's different from being empathic. And I also think, there needs to be care taken around sympathy and compassion because, the Buddhists will talk about idiot compassion, which is like just being nice and kind to everyone. Like, just be kind to everyone. Well, no, if someone's hurting and abusing you, it's not kind to you to make allowances or just allow them to walk all over you and do what you want. That's not compassion and that's not wise. So anyway, I don't know, I've just gone off on a little bit of a rant there. Let me know. Any thoughts? Let me know. Darren. What? If I knew what congruent self-actualization is, I would gladly explain it. But here's the deal. I look forward to your video on it, Darren. I look forward to your video. I will critically review it. Early morning barking. Hello. I haven't seen you for ages. How are you doing? So over Christmas, your family noticed that you're saying sorry less often. I said it's just because I'm working. I'm not apologizing when I don't mean it. Great. Are you one of those people who apologizes all the time? Because I've worked with people and they're like, apologize, apologize, apologize. And I'm like, you like apologizing? Like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I've worked with so many people like that. And it's kind of interesting. It's kind of, why do we apologize when, obviously there are times when it's good to apologize because it's good to say sorry to people when you mean it. But there's other times where I think you almost do it as a reflex, as an impulse. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm to blame, I'm going to around you, I don't want to upset the apple cart, I don't want to upset you. And I think then it's really important to actually stop apologizing and really think about apologizing when you mean it. Yeah. I don't know, does that make sense? You scam, but it's not to manipulate, it's to guard myself. Absolutely. Yeah. That kind of anxious scanning is really common. It's like if you're fearful of being made to feel ashamed or you're fearful of social situations, people scan, as part of any anxiety disorder is scanning for the thing that you're frightened of. Is to laugh. I have a friend with a very severe phobia of dogs. I swear to God, she will know where every dog is within a 10-mile radius. She will know because she scans for them, you know. How long do I think people's thoughts about NPD will change? You mean how long do I think it will take for people's thoughts about NPD to change? Oh, I don't know. I think we're thinking in terms of many, many years, decades, rather than months. But I think it is changing. I do think it is changing. And I think, yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how that emerges. I do think it's changing. I do. It's going to be interesting to see. Yeah, a lot of people with NPD really like CBT. That I know. I think it's very practical and it's like, do this, do this. It's rational. And I think that it kind of appeals for that. Which ones do you rate? Which ones do you like? Oh yeah. Oh, that's nice too. What do you mean by the behavioral panel? Is it always at are they a YouTube channel? Cool. I will look them up. Oh, thanks, Darren. So you yeah, but it's like I see what you mean. So you're not an over apologizer, but maybe you apologize in order to placate. And now you only want to give apologies when you're not placating. I think that's, yeah, I think that's sensible. for sure. There needs to be a new boogeyman for people to stop talking badly about NPT. Yeah, it's true. It's true. I do. I think that it's kind of interesting, kind of like it definitely used to be borderline. And then for a while it was kind of psychopath. People would talk a little bit about psychopath. There was quite a few books written about psychopathy. Um, and then all of a sudden it was like narcissists, they're like the demons. And it's really taken on a life of its own. It's interesting. I think Mark Eatonson said it was like a moral panic, and I think he's right. I think this kind of idea that there's narcissists everywhere and that they're hidden, and the kind of whole misunderstanding of covert narcissism is like the narcissists who hide their narcissism until it's too late to suck you in. And there's all this kind of like really major misunderstandings of what narcissism is. It's quite alarming, actually. But yeah, maybe we need a new bogeyman. Maybe we need a new bogeyman. Oh yeah, I know that one. I can't remember who wrote it. Was it Robert Burns? I'm not, who wrote it? Oh, I can't remember. But yeah, that's a good one. That's not an apology. So there are 4 guys who analyze human behavior and body language, and 2 are former military interrogators. This sounds fascinating. I'm going to look them up. I am definitely going to look them up for sure. That sounds great. So what are your guys' plans for 2024? What are you thinking about for the new year? Okay. Cool. I will have to look it up. I'll have to look it up. So what should we talk about? What should we think about? Or should we say goodnight? A mini facelift? You don't need a facelift. I'm like, I don't know if any of the rest of you watch Sarah's channel. I'm sure you do, but it's like Sarah is aging in reverse. It's like, what, did you make these videos 2 years ago? Because you're just looking younger and younger all the time. You look good. I'm very jealous of your hair. Who else has plans for 24? I don't know if I have plans for 24. I want to work a little less. I say this every year. I'm going to work less this year, and then I don't. You haven't thought that far ahead. You only got like 1 more day. Actually make a video in 24. Yes, me too. That's another thing. I really do. I want to post more consistently on YouTube, because I went through a stage where I was like, where it just was just like in the summer just was like, ugh. And then I kind of got out of it, and now I'm kind of getting back into it, and I'm really enjoying it again, actually. So yeah, I will definitely want to make more videos in 2024. And what do you want to make videos about? And actually, if you guys have suggestions for me to make videos about, leave a comment, because I will definitely do my best to have a look at them and make some. Someone asked me to make a video about flying monkeys, so that's what I'm working on at the moment, is a more nuanced take on flying monkeys. So yeah. Actually, do you guys have thoughts about flying monkeys? What do you think of the concept? Do you like it? Do you find it helpful? Do you find it dehumanizing? I'm not a big fan of the concept, to be honest, because I'm a bit like such a caricature, both of this kind of fearful narcissist figure who's like the Wicked Witch of the West, who's got control over these minions, of monkeys who can go and like basically wreak havoc for other people. I'm like, I don't know, that's really necessarily all that accurate. Although certainly I have seen smear campaigns and horrible things that would be, really hurtful to people who are on the receiving end of when um, often an ex-partner spreads horrible rumors about them. And sometimes I think that's often about getting ahead of the story because it's the person fearing looking bad and being seen in a bad light for other people. So they go off and kind of get their version of the story out first. And to do that, they make you look bad. I certainly think that happens. And then I think there's a lot of sometimes communicating through third parties is often a way of avoiding actually having to speak to you, or finding out, doing a bit of a check to see, will you respond kindly if you reach out to them? Yeah. So thing I'm kind of interesting um, in the idea of enablers. What do you mean by enablers, and what is enabling um, about it? Because it's a concept that I think there's so many individual situations and nuances and interactions that I'm not sure it's possible to kind of just lump everybody into this category of flying monkey. Invisible borderline, you need to learn how to say no. Yes. You should critique victim channel garbage and get out proper information. That's my goal. That is my goal. That is what I want to do. And to do so in a way that's hopefully quite empowering. It always makes me laugh, Sarah, because I always get accused of um, being soft on narcissists, encouraging people to stay in abusive relationships. And I'm like, oh my God, if you were in my therapy room and you saw the number of people that I help get out of relationships where they're being hurt or abused, or stay out of those relationships, or not get into those kind of relationships again. I kind of, yeah. Anyway, I'm just being defensive now because like, it just frustrates me, I think. And I think the other thing I really see that with the victim channels that I find very frustrating is this total focus all the time on narcissist, narcissist, narcissist. I'm like, you're not healing if you're obsessing about narcissists. It's very, yeah, it's a kind of real messing with your head kind of thing to be constantly consuming that kind of content. You don't like what? Mastermind. So flying monkey don't always know that they are. But who are they? Who are they? What are they doing? Flying monkeys are just enablers. So but how do they enable? Yeah, there's lots of motivations. I think, Darren, like what are the motivations? So I think about what do I see? Certainly when I'm working with people, sometimes I see the wanting to keep the peace, wanting not wanting someone to stand up to someone who's highly narcissistic, especially like around the kind of holiday period in families. It's like, don't rock the boat, don't upset them, don't cause trouble, keep the peace. And for some people that feels stifling and boundaryless, and you have to just put up with this crap. And there is that kind of friction between the person who wants to stand up to someone in a family and the person who wants to keep the peace. I make no judgment as to what you should do, but there are effects on the family system. So yeah, sometimes if you're the new partner of someone with MPG, you inadvertently become a flying monkey because you love that person. I mean, yeah, you can be taken in, right? So you can be misled. I think that's often where the kind of gossipy, let's get out in front of other people's stories. So I look Like, so I'm seen in a positive light. So I tell the story in that way, and then I take you in, and maybe I'm making you think other people, well, don't trust that person because they're kind of crazy. All my exes are crazy. I got the crazy ex-girlfriend, which, you know, is often a story that's told to completely discredit another person. Um, and then then you maybe believe them. And who do you believe? So, Rich, when people talk about enabling in the context of MPD, I feel like they're talking about anyone who supports the narcissist delusions, whatever they may be. Yeah. And, again, I think it's all more complicated than that, because even that seems very stereotyped. But what do you mean by the narcissist delusions? Because we all have ambitions and we all have hopes and we all have goals, and sometimes we're a little overambitious. Um, what is it that someone is supporting that's not so helpful? Yes. When people learn to respect your no, they tend to appreciate your yes a lot more. And let me tell you, when you learn to say no, your yes becomes much more powerful to you because you're only saying it when you mean it. So it's like your yes is enthusiastic as opposed to resigned. It's like, yeah. It's the difference between saying, "Yes, I really want that," or "Yes, that would be great," compared to, "Yeah, okay then," you know, which I say a lot to my kids, like, "Can I have another cookie?" "Yeah, okay then." So, yeah, I think it's about learning to say no so your yes is enthusiastic. Which bit? Which bit is describing your Christmas? It's a mastermind. I don't remember using someone else to get back at people. I generally handle it on my own, mostly with rage. Um, Sarah, the flying monkey empathizes with the narcissist in their story, or the flying monkey doesn't want the narcissist to turn on them. Absolutely. Absolutely. Motivations can be fear, naivety, collusion, so many other reasons. Yep. But I also think these are very normal, because you cannot go around. I think when you listen to someone's story, whether they're new to you, if you go around questioning every detail they give you, um, I think we do tend to believe what people tell us, and it's not necessarily pathological. Um, so sometimes we can be naive to the other versions of the story until perhaps they become a little clearer to us. Um, and yes, I think if you know someone who's highly narcissistic and who has a tendency towards rage or antagonism or abusive behaviors, then yes, maybe you collude in order to keep the peace, in order to not be on the receiving end of their rage or their anger, or to create kind of antagonism and conflict. So there's lots of that can certainly happen. And I also think, tell me what you think of this, but I think sometimes as well, when someone has been with a narcissist and the story is told, the narcissistic person will get out ahead with, I'm imagining a scenario where maybe you have a breakup and or you've had some form of conflict, and then you know everyone can be worried about whose side are people going to take if this relationship is coming to an end and it's not an amicable end. And everyone can be worried, are people going to think badly of me? Are people going to think, um is it going to change how people see me? Is it going to change my friendships and relationships with those people? And so you can really see how the desire to get out ahead, to like a dodgy politician getting ahead of a scandal, present your version of events and get sympathy. And even if that means throwing the other person under the bus, well, so be it, because my goal is to protect my ego. That's often what's going on. And then other people around that don't necessarily have the full picture. So, we will naturally empathize with whoever's speaking to us. But I think one of the really tricky things, and tell me what you think about this, and this is not about victim blaming at all, but I think one of the difficult things for the other person in that scenario who hasn't got out of ahead of the story is that you can begin to imagine that everyone around you is talking about you and talking about you in a very negative way and making all kinds of judgments about you. And that can be very, very shame inducing and very, very isolating. And so you can really start to imagine the whole world is gossiping about you, the whole world is against you, and the whole world is forming a negative impression of you. And actually, people may not care as much as you think they do. And they may not necessarily be as quick to believe the version of events that they've been told, um, as you think they are. So I do think there's a lot of shame that comes into this, and people can end up very, very isolated and not wanting to be around people. And I think that can be a big part of that flying monkey dynamic for the person who has, for whatever reason, become someone a narcissist is angry with, or is smearing, or is doing things like that. But you know what, you guys let me know. Does that resonate? Do you recognize it? If you're BPD and the new partner of an MPD, of course you believe everything they tell you. Yeah, but that's because you also have the fantasy, right? You have the fantasy of perfect love. And it's that desire to, I want to believe that this person is my knight in shining armor. I want to believe this person is going to be the perfect lover, is going to be my perfect soulmate, is going to be my best friend forever and ever and ever, and is going to be so, so different. And yeah, we motivated. You want to believe it. You want to believe it, even though it may be very, very far from the truth. But what I would also say is that, you know, it's okay to give people the benefit of the doubt. Most of us do that. And I certainly remember when I was dating, I spent a long time internet dating before I met my partner. And there were times when I would play along, and I had already decided I don't trust this person. There's something about them I don't trust. But I would go along with it. I would rarely, if ever, confront on the actual date. But I just disappear afterwards. But yeah, just because people aren't actively questioning doesn't mean they're gonna automatically believe, or they have no little question mark in the back of their head thinking, it doesn't sound quite right to me. I could make a whole series of videos on narcissistic delusions, but you know what? I could also make a whole series on delusions that we all have, but yeah, I could. So Sarah, when I'm pissed, I'm not making up why I'm pissed. So my story feels real to me. Yeah. So when people talk about smears being lies, no, ma'am, I'm just absolutely. I think that's also true. But do you think there's a calculated element, like I'm going to get out ahead of the story, or do you think it's also it's possibly both? It's like also I am pissed, I am angry, and I am seeing this through that lens of my anger, and that's where I'm talking from. So maybe it's not calculated at all. That's an interesting point, actually, that when you're seeing things only through that lens of anger, you're not, yeah. So it's both. Interesting. Yeah, I think that's probably true. I'm gonna work that into the video, actually. That actually, yeah, it is that your own defensiveness coloring the way you interpret the situation, your own anger and rage, coloring the way you see it. And that's probably what you share with other people. And then, of course, add to that the desire to protect your own self-image and to come across as in a positive light, and to maybe defend yourself to what the other party might ultimately say at some point. That's quite a combination. And I'd also be really interested in, like, being on the receiving end of that, because when someone's really angry and they're coming at you with that kind of ragey moment, and they're raging, it's not the time where you're going to go, I really think there may be other ways to see this that you're not seeing right now, because that's not going to get a good reaction. So most of the time you kind of empathize until it bubbles down, right? um, you don't necessarily confront back. Yeah. So is that anger really coloring the way that you interact, not only directly with the person, but the way you talk about them when they're not there to other people? Are there any other thoughts about that? And what a cheerful topic for the end of 2023. But are there any other comments or questions? Because I'm thinking I might go and make the video. We're purged, man. We're already purged. Chill. We got it all out. So you feel bad after the rage? I think most people do feel bad after the rage because I think there's also at least some small part of us that may know we're being a little outrageous. But sometimes when you're in that rage moment, you just want to stay in the rage and you don't want to hear the sense. Sometimes you have to burn that bit out before you can start to think a little more broadly. But then for someone who's highly narcissistic, that's also threatening. Happy New Year, Sarah. And, I'm glad you're going out, even if it's to get booze. Get something good, though. Get something good. Get something nice. But you guys, it has been, as always, a pleasure and a lot of fun. But I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go and make the video. And I will super look forward to seeing you guys in 2024. So yeah. Thank you so much. And good night.